Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Nate Schoemer, and you are watching my show on dog training. We are doing another live Q&A. As I said before, I'm going to try to make these more common to where I'm doing hopefully around 3 per week. So if you have questions and I don't answer it during one live Q&A, try checking out the next one and maybe I can get to it then. So what I'm going to start off with this live Q&A is answer some of the questions that people posted in the comments section of the Q&A that I did yesterday. So we'll start with, how do you recommend speeding up a response to a command? When we think about speed and how fast our dogs are going to perform a command, it's often based on motivation and confidence. When I'm teaching a new dog behaviors and I'm starting to add the verbal command, and the dog's not completely 100% how to respond to that verbal command yet, but the dog's starting to get a bit of an idea, and I'm sure you've seen this before. You give a dog the down command and the dog starts to go down and the dog's looking at you for confirmation. That dog's starting to understand the concept, but the dog's not completely confident that he or she is making the right choice. Once the dog is really confident in the behavior, the speed usually does tend to increase, but also motivation is a major factor of speed. Speed is often based on motivation. A dog's going to run really fast if it's chasing a squirrel, and a dog's going to run really fast if it's running away from a cougar. Speed is based on motivation, and that speed can be developed through something that the dog thinks is good. I really want to get into the position so I can be released and start playing tug. Or, I really want to get into the position so I can avoid punishment. Either one is going to increase speed. Now, of course, we would like to, or we prefer to have our dogs believe that doing a behavior more quickly leads to better activities. And the breed that you're training or working with is going to play a huge part of this as well. If you're working with a breed like a Malinois or a Dutch Shepherd or a working level German Shepherd or something like that, Border Collie, these types of dogs, they're often going to move very, very fast because it's built into their DNA. Whereas if you're working with a Newfoundland or a dog that just moves more slowly, these behaviors are only going to get as fast as what is, in a sense, built into the dog's genetics. So speed is also largely based on the dog that you're working with. So my dog Ari, that's in the background, she is a very fast dog. She moves incredibly fast. Even now at 10 years of age, she still moves very, very fast. And of course, the training did play a big part of that, but a lot of it was built into her DNA. Now, there are exercises that I like to do, and I'm going to repeat one of my all-time favorite dog trainers, Michael Ellis. He says in one of his videos, which I definitely recommend checking out. If you just look up Michael Ellis, it's a video where he's talking during a seminar, and it's an introduction to his philosophy of dog training. And he says, one of the things that we like to do in the very beginning is when we get a dog to go into the position, we release them and reward them right away. So the dog starts to learn, the faster I get into the position, the faster I'm released and I get access to my reward, and it tends to speed them up. And that's a really great way to start increasing speed and increasing motivation. There's other things that we can do. For example, I have a video on speeding up commands, and one of the ones that I demonstrate in the video is speeding up the recall command. Now, when we do a recall, we have to define what that means to the dog. Now, some people have a recall where the dog just has to come to the person's general area. And then we have other more formal, precise recalls where the dog is being recalled into a position. I do both types of recall, but there are multiple commands that I can use with my dogs to where if they are at a distant position from my location and I use one of these commands, just based on the command, the dog will have to come to me in order to get there. And what I mean by that is the heel position, for example. If I've taught my dog to come to the heel position on my left side, if my dog is 20 feet away from me and I say heel, my dog has to come to me in order to get to that position. Same thing with the center command. Same thing with the sit front. And the sit front is where the dog is sitting directly in front of us. And depending on what sport, or if you're just doing it for yourself, for fun, whatever, They have different rules. Some sports, they do a contact sit front where the dog is making contact to the handler. And then other sports, they want the dog to be as close as possible, but without touching the handler and looking up and being straight and center. That's what I usually prefer to train. I like the dog to run and get really close and sit directly in front of me, but not making direct contact. But I think both are great. The contact one looks really nice. There's some trainers that perform this beautifully. I've mentioned Nino before on my channel, as well as the live Q&A that I did yesterday, and he has a beautiful contact sit front, beautiful contact heel. And if that's the type, if those types of things interest you, definitely check it out. But one of the things that I do to speed up a recall, and I wouldn't do this all the time, there's a balance when we're doing certain things like this. And I mentioned it the other day where I was talking about the reinforcement event. So the reinforcement event I like to define as any time we're trying to get our dog to perform a behavior. So if I give my dog a command, if I tell my dog come, and let's say I'm doing the formal recall where the dog has to sit directly in front of me, that reinforcement event is not over until the dog completes the exercise. So by definition, that means the dog has to come to me, sit directly in front of me, and then maintain that position until I give the dog a new command, I release them, or I use one of my terminal markers. That would conclude the recall. But I can release a dog from a reinforcement event if I choose before they complete the event and have them enter a reward event. And so what I mean by that is I can call my dog to me. The moment my dog makes the decision to run in my direction, I can use what I call my secondary terminal marker, which is release plus reward. And that is get it is what I use for that. So I say get it, and then my dog goes and gets access to the reward away from me. Now, using a secondary termination marker or terminal marker is not necessary for most people. We really only need it if we have multiple rewards and we want to clearly direct our dog to a specific reward. If I have a ball in the field, and let's say I'm working on my dog focusing on the source but maintaining a contact heel, I can have my dog maintain that contact heel, focus on the source, so looking at a ball in the field, and I can release my dog using a terminal marker. For me, it's the word free, and then the dog will jump up and get the tug toy for me. So free says you're released, you're being rewarded, but the reward is coming from me. Or I can say get it, and then my dog would run and get the toy that I placed in the field that the dog was focusing on. So I can direct the dog to which reward I want them to go to. And I believe this started with protection dog trainers, where they would have a decoy out in the field. They would use a release reward marker, termination marker, and they would want the dog to grab a toy that they had, but the dog would try to take off and go bite the decoy. So if we don't tell the dog which reward they can go to, and they have multiple reward options, they're going to choose the one that they prefer. And as I've mentioned before, most dogs doing protection sport, biting the decoy is their all-time favorite thing. I've seen dogs get so excited when the decoy walks out that they can barely contain themselves. And so that's why they started using, I believe, the secondary termination marker. Some people call it a pre-mac marker. But anyways, the dog starts to run towards me. I say, get it. I throw my toy directly behind me. Some trainers will throw their toy between their legs, and the dog comes flying and runs through their leg to go get the toy. So then when we do this, the dog is anticipating the possibility of being released to get their toy, and they tend to come to us more quickly. Also, doing things like building frustration is a really great way to increase speed on a recall. This is something that a lot of people do with their puppies. They have the puppy on a harness, one design for pulling. They have someone hold the puppy, and then they run away calling and praising the puppy, and the puppy gets very, very frustrated, and then they're released and they come running very quickly to their owner, to their human. And that's another really good way to increase speed. But with the one where I was talking about releasing them in the middle of the reinforcement event, so again, I go, come, the dog makes the right choice, get it, I throw the toy behind me. We don't want to do that too often because we don't want our recall to become the dog running right past us. So we have to think about patterns and how this works within our dog training. Sometimes patterns are good, where we can use it as an advantage to teach our dog certain things, but sometimes patterns can cause training issues. I'll give you another example with patterns and how it can create an issue. When I was learning the AKC utility obedience routine at the Tom Rose School, I was training, and one of the exercises is send out to jumps. I don't recall what it's called, but there's two jumps, one on the left, one on the right, and there's a space in the center. And you have your dog and you send your dog forward with a send out. So you tell your dog to run or whatever command you have, your dog runs. Once your dog gets to the other side of the training building, you tell your dog to go into a sit, your dog sits and looks at you. Then you tell your dog which jump to do. So you might point to your right and say jump, and now the dog has to jump that and then come into the sit front, and then you do a flip finish. Then you have to send the dog out again to another send out into a sit. Now you have to do the other jump. And if the dog does the wrong jump, you can be disqualified for that. I was training and I was doing it in that sequence. And one of my friends at the school, and one of the best trainers I've ever worked with, he's absolutely incredible, and he was the only trainer that graduated faster than I did. And I had no excuse either, because we both got our puppies from the same litter. So I got a Malinois from the same litter that he got his Malinois, and I got my Dutch Shepherd from the same litter that he got his, and he just beat me. He's just better. Amazing trainer. And he went on to do incredible things. Every competition he entered, he took first place. I think one he took second. He won nationals in PSA level 1. So really, really great trainer. And I was having issues because what was happening was my dog was anticipating certain things. So my dog was anticipating I was going to do the sit because I was doing the send out to the sit. And so my dog wouldn't go as far, wouldn't go as fast. My dog was anticipating me sending the jump. And it was just creating a lot of conflict. And he said, hey, you know what would help you is if you separate these exercises. He said, just do send out. Don't always have your dog sit. Just do send out. Have your dog go get a reward. Have your dog do something. And then when you're doing the jumps, place your dog in the sit and then do the jump separately. So then later when you test, your dog is going to do the behavior correctly, and you're connecting these together, and you're not creating a habit, or rather an expected response that your dog's going to end up performing not quite the way that you want. Another good example is the send out in IGP obedience. So when I train the send out, and I have videos on how I like to teach the send out, and I learned that strategy from the Tom Rose School, and Tom Rose and Dave Van Garderen, the other phenomenal instructor at that school. And again, he teaches at Kennelwood Academy. When I do the send out, I pretty much never tell my dog to go into a sit or a down. Because again, if we do that a lot, if I'm in training and I send my dog and I do a send out, my dog takes off and I say down, and I do this over and over again, my dog's going to anticipate me commanding them into a down, and it's going to slow down their send out. So the best thing we do is we separate it. We do multiple send outs to where the dog is always going out to the field to get something. There's always something of value for the dog. They're going to get food, they're going to get a toy, something they want. And then we do random sits and downs, is what Tom Rose would call it. And this is where we randomly tell our dog to sit or down in multiple different situations from multiple distances. So then the dog gets so accustomed to it. And this is something I also mentioned the other day. When we train a dog enough on a command, and we do it over and over again, and we're consistent with the follow through. This is why I often mention or say that dogs are creatures of habit. But if I do something so much with a dog, their response to a command can actually become a classically conditioned response, meaning it's involuntary. So if you do that, and some of the best trainers in the world do that, look up some of the best send outs in IGP. You'll see these trainers tell their dog to run, and the dog will take off full speed. And they'll tell the dog to down, and the dog will still be running as it goes into a down and will slide 10 feet on the ground. And everybody claps in the audience. Absolutely gorgeous. They've conditioned that dog so well to the command that the response became classically conditioned. So even though the dog was running full speed, it still went into the position. And this takes a lot of work and a lot of repetitions, of course, and doing it the right way. So speed is based on motivation. Increase your dog's motivation will increase the speed. Increase your dog's confidence will also increase the speed. Things that slow down commands is lack of confidence, being corrected unfairly. So it's another thing that we talked about the other day. If I am correcting a dog and the dog doesn't understand why they're being corrected, if I'm correcting a dog for mistakes, if they don't know how to prevent it, the dogs become cautious. And this cautiousness slows down our dog's behaviors. They start to move more slowly because we've shown them that it's dangerous to try things. We've shown them that it's dangerous to do things without fully thinking it through, and this again will slow down our dog. So keep those things in mind. I hope that answered the question. And now I'm going to see what question we have next. I need to pull it up over here, so just bear with me for one moment. Okay, excellent. And it looks like we have 23. What's going on? Arm and Hammer, thanks for joining us. Hi, hey, how are you? Okay, let's see. See what the next question is. I can't control my dog. He's an out of control dog breed, and he's super crazy. Okay, that's funny. It sounds more like a statement, less like a question. Would you recommend going to a dog training school to become a dog trainer, or working with a local trainer through an apprenticeship? Okay, so when we're talking about becoming a professional dog trainer, it depends on how much time you have, and it depends on the resources that you have. This is something else I mentioned yesterday, and it's worth mentioning, and I will mention it every single day for those that are willing or want to become professional dog trainers. One of the best sources, in my opinion, that we have as dog trainers, whether you're working professionally or not, or you're just fascinated about dog training, I would say this person is easily top 1% when it comes to dog trainers. But in my opinion, he is the greatest of all time, the GOAT when it comes to teaching trainers, and that's Michael Ellis. I talk about Michael Ellis quite a bit. He has a membership that you can sign up to, and I also want to state that I'm not an affiliate to where if I recommend that you go and get his course, I get nothing from that. I just think he is incredible. I signed up for his course a few days ago. I am constantly studying dog training. There's this interesting book called The Half-Life of Facts. I started it recently. I heard someone else on a podcast mention it, and so I started reading it. And they break down how things are constantly changing and evolving. At the very beginning, they're talking about what doctors were learning in the early 20th century and how just a few decades later that information was changing. One of the examples was there used to be 48 chromosomes, and they discovered it was 46. So things are always changing. And the longer we're in an industry, the more we have to keep up to what's happening. Because we have this incredible platform, YouTube, to where dog trainers can share techniques and strategies, and we can communicate and work together with one another. Like just about a month ago, I met up with Larry Crone. I went to his seminar, which was excellent, had a blast. If you have an opportunity to go to one of his seminars, I definitely recommend it. I had a lot of fun, incredibly charismatic guy, really funny. So overall, just super entertaining, great way to hang out with other dog trainers, and we did a podcast. Things like that really weren't available up until more recently, and so because of that, we're constantly evolving and we're constantly getting better as trainers. So to answer the question, what I would do if I was on a budget, I would sign up for Michael Ellis's membership on his website. It's $70 a month, and so pretty much all my downtime right now, if I'm taking care of dishes, or if I'm doing the laundry, or if I'm driving from one location to another, I'm listening to Michael Ellis on his course. I'm going through his puppy section right now, and it's just brilliant. He's just so good at breaking things down. So what I would do is I'd probably go on something like Nextdoor or Facebook community, and I would make a post asking if there's other people in the area that want to become a professional trainer, or they're learning to become a professional dog trainer, or they are and they just want to get better and they want to have a training partner. Once I found someone, then I would get the membership, or I would get the membership prior to that of Michael Ellis, and then I would go through the program with this person. I would get a couple puppies that I think would be good for that type of training, and I would work with the dogs every day. I would work with this other trainer. I would film the other trainer. I would have the other trainer film me. We would critique, review, and grow together, and that's a really good way to build a very strong foundation. And then I would probably sign up for Rover, And on Rover, you can be a dog walker and you can also board dogs. So you sign up on there, and then when you go do dog walking, ask the owner, hey, do you mind if I do some obedience training with your dog? Most people are going to be okay with it. Take the dogs out. Now you're starting to increase your frame of reference, working with multiple different dogs, doing loose leash walking, doing basic commands, sit down, come. You can do a lot of that on a walk. And if you start taking in dogs for boarding, you're going to get a boarding fee, whatever it is that you charge, between, I don't know, $20 to $50 per day, depending on where you're located and what the going rate is. And then when dogs come in, ask the owners, do you mind if I do some obedience training with your dog? I'm working on being a dog trainer. Now you can work with these dogs at the same time making money. Now you're not going to be making a lot walking dogs or doing boarding, but you're basically getting paid to work with multiple different dogs. You can volunteer at shelters, you can volunteer at rescues. Those are other great ways. And you can offer free training to people within the community. And that's a great way, again, to increase your frame of reference, working with lots of different dogs. And I say that a lot, frame of reference, because it is important. The more dogs you work with, the more you're going to understand the differences between dogs and when you work with them. And when one does something, you've probably seen it before, and you'll be able to figure out ways to work with these different dogs. Now, if you have more time and you have a greater budget, going to a school is great, but it also comes down to the individual. I've seen some trainers that went through the Tom Rose School that are incredibly talented trainers, but they put in a lot of work. It's not like you can just go and learn the information and suddenly you're a good trainer. Dog training is a skill game. And I say it's a game because it should be seen as a game. It should be something that's fun. That's something that Larry and I were talking about. Like, dog training should be fun. If you're not having a good time, you're doing something wrong. If your dog's not having a good time, you're doing something wrong. So it should be fun. And just like any sport, if you want to get good at a sport, you have to play the sport a lot. You can learn the rules to most sports, most simple sports, relatively quickly, but you're not going to get good at it without spending time on the court and working with lots of dogs. So it's really about putting in the time. And then I've seen other trainers go through the Tom Rose School, and they're terrible trainers. I wouldn't hire them. I wouldn't recommend anyone to them because they didn't put in the work. They didn't put in the time. Either they didn't value it, their parents were paying for the course for them. So you may have heard the saying, anything given away for free is worthless. And so just because you go to school doesn't guarantee you're going to be successful. And training dogs is fun, but it is also work. And work can be fun too, but nonetheless, it is something that takes a lot of time to get really good at. I can't tell you how many hours training dogs, and I still feel like I have imposter syndrome. Like, I look at certain things that other trainers do. Again, I'm going to mention Nino. I think he's one of the best technicians when it comes to training dogs. If you look at his dogs, they look absolutely amazing. Beautiful performance, the way they move, the energy, the dynamic energy, it's just incredible. I know I said energy twice there. I look at that, I'm like, my dog doesn't look that good. And I've spent, I don't know how many hours training dogs, because when I went through the Tom Rose School, I was training from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. pretty much every day. And then when I graduated and I set up my own business before I was invited back to be an instructor, I was training all day. For about 8 years, I had anywhere between 5 to 17 dogs that I was working on pretty much by myself every day. Like, my house was filled with kennels. I would have to get up. I would do the rotation with the dogs for their potty breaks. Then I would take them out one at a time, train with them. And then I would do play sessions and potty breaks again. And then I would train again. And then I would deal with the clients. It was nonstop. But it gave me a lot of experience, which was really good. But again, we have to put in a lot of hours to get good. So if you're going to go to a school, there's lots of great options. Probably the one I would recommend most for in-person training is going to be Kennelwood Academy. And the head instructor is Dave Van Garderen, and the other instructor there, Jeremy, they're both phenomenal, really, really great trainers. Dave has been on my channel a couple times. I did an interview with him, and then there was a retrieval video that he let me come down and film him and his students working on these retrieval exercises. And he's just very good at explaining things, breaking it down, and helping trainers become better. He's trained some of the best trainers out there. And that, again, is probably my number one pick right now, Kennelwood Academy. But close seconds, Jonathan Katz, he's been on my channel. I think he's an incredible trainer. I believe he's a judge still for Protection Sport Association. Very, very well established in the dog training industry and really, really exceptional trainer. So I haven't been to his school, so I can't talk about experience being there and seeing how it works. But just knowing him as a trainer, he's excellent. And I'm pretty confident that if you go to his school, you're going to do pretty well if you put in the time and work. Tom Rowe's school is still great, still an option. So there's lots of different options if you want to go to a school. These are just going to be more time consuming. And working with another trainer, doing an apprenticeship program, that's also great. So I have a couple apprentices that are going to be starting with me soon, and we're going to be working together, pretty much training together. Like that's what we're going to be doing. And I still buy courses online. I'm probably going to be getting one of the like 3 of the courses on Sit Stay Learn here real soon. The one by Mia, who is IGP world champion, and then Omar, he's done some incredible stuff with Hollywood and dogs painting and using the toilet and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And then also Bob Salamini, who is a French ring decoy, really, really great decoy trainer. And he has a course on how he teaches decoys. So like if you want to be a decoy, and if you're going to become a dog trainer, I recommend don't just sticking in one department. Don't just say, oh, I just like obedience, so that's the only thing that I'm going to do. You want to learn as much as you can about all the different things within dog training. So you want to learn about obedience. You should, not you want to, but you should want to learn about obedience, advanced, competition, protection, scent detection, search and rescue, tracking, service dog. All these things are going to get you to understand dog training at a much deeper level, which is important. And again, we have to constantly evolve and learn as trainers. It never stops, constantly learning. Okay. What's the next question? What are your thoughts on training huskies? Well, training huskies, it's just like any breed. Certain breeds often are bred for certain reasons. Now, if we think about a husky and we think about it being a sled dog, working dog, they're more independent. And so I personally wouldn't get a husky because I like my dogs to be focused on me because I'm very focused on them. I don't want that independent sort of mentality with a dog, which makes sense with a sled dog. If I have a sled dog team, I don't want the dogs constantly looking back at me, checking in to see if I'm following. Like, hey, are we good? Is this what you want? That's not what I want. You're gonna want the dog to do its job. So I was listening to Bethany Perdome. She did a podcast episode on Bow Wow Bill the other day, and I was listening to that, and they started talking about beagles, and supposedly there's a handful of trainers that don't like beagles, and Bethany made a great point. She's like, well, you have to appreciate the breed for what it's bred for. If I lived out in the country and I want to take a dog out and just go around in the forest preserves next to the house and run around and have the dog like that would be great, giving the dog what it was bred to do. And that's something we have to consider when we are getting our own personal dogs, or if we're helping others get dogs. And that's something Bill does with his clients, is he helps them find the dog that's best suitable for them, their family, their needs, and what they want. Getting the right dog from the beginning is very important. But if I was going to describe what it's like working with huskies, I've trained a handful of huskies. I lived in Colorado, so just being in Colorado during the Game of Thrones time, a lot of people were getting huskies, so I worked with a lot of huskies. They do tend to be a little bit more stubborn, or at least that's how a lot of people would define them to be. A little bit more stubborn than some of the other dogs, like a golden retriever that just wants to please the human. Oh, being around the human, that's the best thing. Can I do whatever it is that you want? Whereas a husky is going to be a little bit more independent. They're a little bit more vocal, of course, and they can be stubborn, but they are trainable, and they are beautiful dogs. Would I recommend one? Probably not, unless you have certain needs that fit in with what a husky was bred for. They do need a lot of exercise. They need to be mentally stimulated. They have coats that shed quite a bit. So if you don't like brushing and picking up dog fur, probably not the best breed, but there's some people that love the breed and they do great with them. All right, what's the next one? How to stop whining at the back door. Not sure if I should use a correction or whatever. Okay, so the whining, that is a difficult one, and some dogs just whine It's very common with German Shepherds, at least the ones that I've worked with. They tend to be very vocal. Maverick will whine quite a bit. I mean, he'll just be sitting behind me where my computer desk is downstairs. So this is just the area where I film, so I only film here. But downstairs where I have my working computer set up, he's right behind me. So he has a twin size bed. That's his twin size bed. It's behind me. He's on it. And he'll just be sitting staring at me and he'll start randomly whining. But he's also a working line German Shepherd, and he needs a lot of physical and mental stimulation every day to satisfy those needs. I don't like correcting it using positive punishment. You can use positive punishment to stop it. Sometimes using positive punishment can make it worse because then the dog is whining in anticipation of the positive punishment. So the dog has to be aware that they're whining, and they have to be able to connect that to the correction and knowing that the whining is causing the correction. Now, one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to reward the whining. So if I go upstairs, let's say, after I was in my office. So my office is in the basement. It's a really nice little office setup. Dogs hang out with me down there while I'm working. If I'm coming upstairs and I hear him whining because he wants to come with, I'll wait till he stops whining. I'll make sure it's long enough to where he's not connecting the whining to being rewarded, and then I will let him come up. Something else we need to think about is the concept of classical conditioning. If a dog is classically conditioned to something, they are going to have an involuntary response. So there's certain things that can trigger certain behaviors that we may not like, one of which could be whining. There was a trainer I was working with a few years back, and we were doing IGP, and his dog would get so excited for the training that while he was healing and working with the dog would constantly whine. And of course, he didn't want the dog to whine, and he was able to fix this over time. And what he did to fix this was he unconditioned the dog to the training, meaning he brought the dog out and then he left. He brought the dog out, and then he did that over and over and over again to where going out on the field no longer predicted the training that the dog really liked. And that was tough for him to go through, to uncondition the dog, basically saying, this is not as fun as you once thought it was. And then once that behavior, because again, a classically conditioned response is involuntary. And we have to be aware of that. If our dog is doing an involuntary response, using punishment is not going to stop that involuntary response, at least not from my experience. Unconditioning the dog and then showing them what we want usually works a little bit better. So it's very similar to counter conditioning, but instead we're unconditioning. I'll give you a very simple example. If I have a dog that is classically conditioned to the word yes, so yes means the dog's going to get a treat. The analogy that a lot of people use is the battery. So this is why some people call it charging the marker. So I say, yes, I give the dog a treat. So the marker is charged a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, till eventually it's 100% charged. So when I say yes, it's 100% charged. The dog is going to get excited, salivate, wiggle their body in joy of getting their reward. Whatever their change of behavior is, it's 100% charged. Every time I use that marker and I don't follow it up with a reward, the reward event in which the dog has been trained to believe is going to happen when I use that marker, the charge is going to decrease. So if I wanted to uncondition the dog to the word yes, I would say yes the way that I would as a marker, yes. And I would do that again and again until eventually the dog goes, that doesn't mean anything anymore. I removed the charge by saying it and not having it predict the primary. And this is something that's important to keep in mind too, because I've had trainers in the past, and this is why I point it out, and it's very important. I've had trainers in the past where their dog does something, they say yes, the dog gets excited, and I go up to the trainer and I said, is yes your marker? And they say, yeah, it's my marker. And I said, how come you didn't reward your dog? And they said, well, the dog's happy, look it. And I said, well, your dog's happy because your dog thought that she was going to get a reward. Now you just crushed her world because she's not getting the reward that she thought she was going to get. Now you're not crushing their world, but that does bring me to another point too. There are times where let's say you're in a situation and your dog does something that you really like, but you don't have any treats on your person, you don't have a toy, but you still want it to connect the behavior that your dog did with a reward. So your dog does the behavior and you use your marker. You think to yourself, wow, well, I don't have a primary. Well, you can still pet the dog and praise the dog after marking the behavior. The dog's going to connect the behavior with it being something good, so they're going to want to repeat it in the future. And then later, when you have a treat, use the marker again, reward the dog, and just rebuild up that charge. It's not going to damage the charge of the marker if we use the marker once and we don't follow through with the primary. But of course, in my opinion, it's best practice that if we use a marker, we follow it up with the primary. I hope that answered the question. So, yeah, with whining, you can correct it. You can try to determine if it's a classically conditioned response, uncondition the dog to that, then show them the preferred behavior to get what they want. This is something else I also talk about. If we know what our dog wants, then often we can get them to do what we want in order for them to get what they want. So that's, cause and effect. You want this, do this, I'll give you that. And then once the dog makes that connection, we start to get the behavior we want, and then we pay the dog with what they want. Of course, randomizing rewards as well. Thanks for another Q&A. Thank you for being here. I need help maintaining engagement with my dog during walks. He engages for a couple seconds and then just moves on. Any tips? So if we look at walks and we think about what it is, so let's define a walk where the dog is maintaining a specific position as a mobile stay. So it's a stay command, but it's mobile, and the dog has to stay in a certain position relative to us, the handler or the trainer. If a dog's checking out, well, it's also making me wonder, how is the dog checking out? Are you trying to do a focused heel while on a walk? That's not super realistic. I mean, focus heels during obedience routines where they have the focus heel, it's not a super long routine. So if you look at all the AKC obedience, or you look at IGP or PSA, their obedience routines, they're not the longest routines. The dog goes out, they do the focused heel, they do the other exercises that are a part of that competitive dog sport, but they're not walking blocks and blocks around the neighborhood maintaining a focused heel. So if the dog's maintaining the position on a casual walk, that should be fine. But this is something that I talked about yesterday. Doing a loose leash walk with a dog is usually pretty boring for the dog. What I do with my dogs, they're off-leash trained, so they stay, I use a remote training collar. That's the only way I believe as a responsible dog owner we can have our dogs off-leash. I think if we have a dog off-leash and they're not on a remote training collar, we're being irresponsible. But you can have a dog seem as though they're off-leash by keeping them on a long line. So you can have a 30-foot long line, dog runs around, they feel like they're off-leash even though they're not. But I let the dogs do kind of what they want on a walk. I do a structured walk. I was doing them every day for a little while, and they'd be relatively short. They wouldn't be too long. But I don't do super structured walks all the time with my dog because, again, it's really not that fun for my dogs. If I'm going to have my dogs walking around, I want them to be dogs. I want them to smell things, explore, move around. I want it to be a fun experience for them. But I also want the obedience and the control that I can call them into the heel position if we're walking past another person or we're walking past another dog or something like that. So having that control, run around, explore the environment, come back into heel. Okay, great. You maintain that position. Now you can be released and you can run around and explore the environment a little bit more, of course, within certain boundaries that we can establish. And this is why I like the tone on the remote collar. Ari and Charlie, my Malinois, my lab, they both already knew my boundaries. Now with Maverick, in order to teach him the boundaries, I use the tone setting on the remote training collars that I use. So I use e-collar technology. They have a tone setting. The tone will go for 1.5 seconds. So it's just like a E. After 1.5 seconds, it'll transition to a correction. I first teach the dogs how to comply to the tone. I use that as negative reinforcement. Same way you would teach a dog low-level stim. If you follow any of Larry Crone's work, that's how he teaches the dogs that he works with the remote training collar. He does low-level stim, and he uses it as negative reinforcement. So the dogs are responding. It's not adversive. It's not painful for the dogs. It's signaling them to do something that he's directing them to do. I do the same thing, but I do it with a tone. So I do the tone, I show the dog what to do. I do the tone, I show the dog what to do. Eventually, the dog will respond to just the tone. So then when I walk around with my dog, I will use the tone if he gets too far, and then he comes back and he's figured out that distance. So now he'll maintain usually around 20 feet or so from me. And then again, I can call him back into position. Now, if you want your dog to maintain the heel position the whole time, if you're saying that he's losing focus, meaning he's starting to leave the heel position, then that's just working on duration in the stay. Again, this is a mobile stay, so a mobile stay tends to be a little bit more difficult than a stationary stay, like a sit stay or down stay or a climb stay, play stay, some people call it. And when I do loose leash walking, I have this in my course on Sit, Stay, Learn, I treat it as a game. So the way that I play this game with my dog, and it makes it way more entertaining for me, and it also makes it more entertaining for the dog that I'm training. And pretty much every time I do a stay and train program with the dog, the owners always want them to walk nicely on a loose leash. So it's kind of something that we just do. When I take the dog out and I say heel and I start walking, my goal in the game is to leave the dog's heel position. My dog's goal is to maintain the heel position. So I do a point system. So my dog is able to steal treats from me, and then I'm able to either apply pressure or give the dog a correction. Now, when I say correction, I mean positive punishment, but it's the attitude behind it is what's most important. I often use jujitsu as an analogy. If I'm sparring with my sparring partner and my sparring partner puts me in an arm bar, that is positive punishment. I'm not mad at them. I'm not upset. I'm not worried. But what it does is it prevents me from sticking my arm out and getting arm barred again. It makes my defense a little bit better. And then in order for him to arm bar me again, now he has to navigate through these new defenses that I've established as a way to protect my arm from getting arm barred. And we both get better. And we have a really good time. That's how I treat corrections with my dogs. When I give my dog a correction, a leash pop, a stim on a remote training collar, the ears don't go back. They don't get worried. It's like I took a point from them. And this is how I do it. So I'll be walking with my dog. And if my dog, let's say this is my dog's head, or I'll use my little doggy again. My wife thought it was funny. I used this the other day. So let's say I'm walking with my dog and my dog is looking up at me. We're walking. Everything's good. I can't sneak away right now because the dog's looking at me. But then the dog starts to look off to the side. Now I know the dog's not looking at me. This is my opportunity to step back. So I step back while my dog keeps going forward. Once my dog is clearly ahead of me, that's when, depending on where the dog is in the training, either A, I'll repeat the command heel, or I'll use my marker that predicts a negative reinforcement, which is the word wrong. Both scenarios are the same experience to the dog. I'm using a word, and then I'm showing the dog the preferred behavior. So the dog gets ahead of me, I say wrong, or I say heel, and I use the leash and I guide the dog back into the position. Once the dog's back in the position, good, nice job. I do this when the dog is learning the rules of the game. So I'm not going to give him a correction in the beginning. This is a reinforcement event. Remember, a reinforcement event is to get the dog to do some kind of action. And in this situation, trying to avoid the mic, it's to go from here back to here. That's the action I'm having the dog do. So if the dog looks off and I start to sneak back and the dog catches me, they just won a point. I got to pay the dog. So now I bust out a treat like, you got it. Good job. So this is now the game. And then once the dog goes ahead of me and I say wrong and the dog comes, oops, I'll break my mic, and the dog comes back to me on their own, that lets me know, okay, you had a chance to learn the rules. Next time it's going to be a correction. So this is how I play the game. Anytime I try to sneak back, dog catches me, yes, I pay the dog. Dog doesn't catch me, I back up. Now let's say I transition to a correction. Now I go, no. I give the dog a leash pop. Dog turns around, I'm like, I got you. Dog comes back, nice, good job. And the attitude behind the dog's like, oh, okay, this is a game. This is fun. We're having a good time. So I can use positive punishment and I can get the dog to maintain the position by implementing this game. And what's really interesting and fun about this, when I do this with clients in person, it changes the way they look at the game. Or it changes the way they look at the exercise. Now, a lot of people, they start to get frustrated at their dog when their dog is leaving the heel position because they really want the dog to maintain the heel position. Does the audio still sound good, by the way? If it does, let me know. Like maybe say, yeah, it sounds good. I don't want to mess this thing up. Yesterday, I guess the volume wasn't high enough, so I turned it up a little bit today. So hopefully the volume's a little bit better. But what I was saying is when I work with clients in person and we're working with their dog, when they make that shift in their thought process of how we're doing the training, now it's a game and they're actively trying to leave the dog's heel position. And now it becomes very difficult for them to leave the heel position because the dog sees it as a game. Dog's watching, and now we can have our dog walking really well, loose leash walking, and it's very hard for us to leave the heel position because we gamified the process. And now loose leash walking is no longer like stay in heel, or I gotta have a tight leash and all this stuff. It's something fun. Okay. Could be slightly higher. Okay, cool. Let me try to turn it up a little bit. Let me know if this is better. Okay, so I turned it up a little bit more. Let me know if that's good. Enjoy your technique. Thanks, Forrest, sharing, Nate. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay. All right. Let's see. Where was I? Sorry, bear with me for a moment. And I hope that answered the walking question. Okay, I have a 10-week-old puppy. He barks at every dog he meets. How can I make him focus on me and stop barking? Do you know why he's barking? And what's the situation? So is it while you're out on a walk, while you have your dog? This is something, again, I was talking about it just yesterday, where dogs have different thresholds. And some dogs are going to respond either easier than others. Okay, it's good, much better. Okay, awesome. Thank you for letting me know as far as the sound goes. So with puppies, what I'm really trying to do, my goal with puppies, when I'm working with a puppy is, one, I want to do a lot of environmental exposure. I want to take them to lots of different places, and I want to pair it with something the dog already enjoys. So I want to create a positive experience. Veterinarians, rightfully so, are going to tell you not to take, and I say rightfully so because their job is your dog's health. Dog trainers, our job is your dog's obedience and behavior and things like that. So they say don't get a lot of them will say don't take your dogs out until they've had their first 3 sets of vaccination shots. I always take my puppies out. Even when they're 8 weeks of age, I just take them to places where there's not a lot of dog traffic. So I'm not taking them to areas where parvo is a big risk or other things that the dog can get really sick. But I do take them places because during that imprinting stage, the first 16 weeks of the dog's life, that's very, very important to the things the dog sees and does. And if I wait to start exposing my dog to the world after 16 weeks, I'm not going to have the same sort of foundation and the same sort of stable response in these situations as I would if I started earlier. So one really big thing, environmental exposure, and that's really what socializing is. Again, I talked about this yesterday, but socializing doesn't always mean having everybody interact with our dogs. It doesn't mean having every dog interact with our dogs. It's more about exposing our dogs to lots of different things within close proximity, as close as the dog can handle, and pairing it with something pleasant. So confidence building, the way that I look at confidence building, so I've had people ask, how do I build? What are some things I can do to build a dog's confidence? We can build a dog's confidence through play. It's a massive one, lots of play. I mean, play is one of the most important things that you can do with your dog. With Ari, my Malinois in the background, pretty much everyone who meets her loves her. They're like, she's the best dog. She's incredible. She's amazing. When she was a puppy, most of the time that I spent with her, 95% of the time, was play. That's pretty much all we did. We did obedience, but it was fun obedience, but we did a ton of play. So play is really important. Play is going to help build confidence. And when we are building confidence, the most simplified way that I like to look at it is giving my dog all kinds of experiences and making those experiences positive. That is the most important thing. How can I make this positive? What can I use to make this positive? And it's all about creating those positive associations. I know I said positive a bunch there, but really that's what it is. I mean, it's the same thing with people. If you want to create, and this is an example I heard someone else give, and it's a relatively good example. If you're trying to read more and you don't really care to read, that's not something you like to do, but you really love that cup of coffee in the morning, well, when you have your cup of coffee, make it mandatory that you read. So then you're pairing something that you don't like as much, reading, but you want to do more of it, with something you really like, that first cup of coffee. And so creating positive associations, that's going to help build our dog's confidence. If the dog is barking at other dogs, we have to wonder why. Is the dog barking out of frustration because the puppy wants to go play with them and your puppy's being restricted? Is it a form of defense? So the best offense is a good defense, or the best defense rather is a good offense. So is the dog barking like, hey, back up, stay away from me? Is it a fear bark? Is your puppy's hackles going up, and is your puppy backing up while your puppy's barking? This is going to be a fear response. So for that, my preferred method for dealing with fear is counter conditioning and desensitization. I have an article where I talk about it. There are other techniques like flooding, habituation, BAT, which is behavioral adjustment training. So there are these other approaches, but my favorite is the counter conditioning and desensitization. I have had the most success with that in the shortest amount of time, and I've gotten really nice results using that concept. So these are the things that I'm going to be having to know. And then I also have to see, like, what are you doing as the handler? Is there a lot of tension on the leash that could be causing the dog to respond that way? So if you are able to write a little bit more on that, I could add a little bit more, but that's the best I got for right now based on the information provided. I hope that was helpful. All right, so my 10-month-old, I can't read what that says. This additional monitor that I have is not that great. Gets completely winded. I think it's Malinois or something else. Gets completely winded when getting the ball over and over. Like 5 to 8, get it in. He breathes so fast and his heart rate is so hard, I worry. How to slow him down. So that just sounds like doing a little bit less with the exercise and then over time building it up. Same thing with people. Also considering the dog's diet. So what type of food do you have the dog on? Is it a premium food? There's a lot of different debates when it comes to nutrition for dogs. I like, I'm drawing a blank on her name right now, but her and someone else wrote the book, The Forever Dog. And I think she has some really, really informative, great content on YouTube. And then there's other people that don't like her at all. So I'm more of the type of trainer that likes raw. So I feed my dogs raw. I use high quality kibble for training. But when my dogs eat their meals, they eat raw dog food. I buy pre-made, pre-packaged raw. Right now, my dogs are on Stella and Chewy. Frozen raw patties. I buy the 8-ounce patties. They get, well, Maverick gets 2 of those. My other dogs, they get 1. And then I also use dehydrated dog food. So like Honest Kitchen, Sojo's, where we add the water. And then you can get your dog different vitamins and things like that. But what our dogs are consuming, just like with people, is going to have a really massive impact on their physical performance. And they even make supplements for dogs. So you can buy certain supplements that are designed to increase endurance. And again, it's the same thing with people. Like, I take a ridiculous amount of supplements. I take, well, it's vitamins and things like that, but every day I take around 27 vitamins and like 6 different powders. It's ridiculous how much I take. But my blood work is great. In fact, I had a doctor's appointment earlier today just to check up, and my blood pressure was pretty much perfect. So kind of bragging a little bit about that, but, what our dogs consume is gonna play a big part. So I would say look at what you're feeding your dog. Try to increase the quality of what you're feeding your dog. If you feel like your dog might need some additional supplements, just look into it, do the research, ask your veterinarian for advice on that, and then slowly continue to work up on increasing your dog's endurance through exercise, through play, different forms of exercise. You can have a dog that can run 5 miles but gets really tired doing 5 minutes of tug. So incorporating different forms is going to help with that as well. So the stuff I was saying about the food, these are things that I focus on, things that I look at, which I think is important. So take the information and try to make the best decision for you and your dog. Good afternoon. My 8-month-old German Shepherd always wants to mouth. Yeah, this is pretty common. She's done it since the beginning. What is the best way to curb this behavior? Okay, I'm going to define mouthing under the self-reinforcing behaviors. So, meaning we don't have to reward a dog to get them to do a certain behavior like mouthing. The dog will just mouth because it's fun and it's something that the dog does. Now, usually mouthing often stops after teething. So once they're done teething, they stop, but not always. I mean, if the dog enjoys it, they can keep doing it. So you have a couple options. Self-reinforcing behaviors, what I always say is prevent, redirect, or correct. So you can prevent it from happening, meaning you don't give your dog the opportunity to do it, using management techniques, muzzles, things like that. That's not what I would go for in this situation. You have redirect and you have correct. So what I would do is I would start with redirect and then I would transition to correct. So meaning I'm going to teach the dog the rules first. Once I feel like the dog knows the rules, when I'm confident the dog understands it, then I will correct the dog if the behavior continues. When we redirect, we have to be careful not to reward the behavior. So I have a video on puppy biting where I say you can redirect it. So if your puppy is biting, you can redirect your puppy to a chew toy or something like that. So if your puppy goes to bite you, you get your puppy to stop. Maybe your puppy looks at you, whatever it is, then you reward your dog for that. Now, there is a fine line with this because when I do teachable moments, so that's when I'm showing a dog a preferred behavior, I usually don't give them a reward. So if my dog does something I don't want, I don't show them what I want and then reward them for that. And the reason why is because this can cause the dog to do the behavior even more. If the dog learns how to trigger a sequence that ends with them getting a reward, they're going to trigger that sequence more and more. In fact, there's some dogs that will even trigger a sequence that pretty much guarantees they're going to get a correction, but the reward is worth the correction. I know that sounds kind of weird, but look at it this way. Would you be willing to allow someone to pinch your arm for $100? So let's say the pinch is the punishment and then you get $100. A lot of people would be okay with that. Pinch me all day long. Give me $100 all day long. If I knew that if I, let's say, flicked someone's ear, I know these are kind of dumb examples, but hopefully you get the point. If I flicked someone's ear and then they pinched me and then they gave me $100, like, okay, I'm just going to keep flicking their ear because it means they're going to pinch me. I'll take the pinch, not a big deal, and then I'll get the $100. So that's kind of an extreme example, but that's something that happens in our dogs' minds. So we have to be careful with that. But with puppies, what I do is I will quickly redirect them. The puppy looks at me or the puppy sits. It doesn't matter. And then I give the puppy the other toy. It doesn't mean that biting my arm or biting my sleeve is no longer fun for the dog. We've just given them a different option. We haven't stopped or corrected the behavior. Remember, punishment prevents the repeat of a behavior. Negative punishment or positive punishment. Now, negative punishment for puppy biting works very, very well. Or even older dogs it could work on. The way that we do that, so if we have our dog, puppy, or our dog, let's say the dog's in a room or the puppy's in a playpen and you're with the dog or the puppy and they go to bite you while you're playing with them. You're like, yeah, good puppy, good puppy. I call all dogs puppies. Even like my Ari, my 10-year-old dog, I'm like, oh, good puppy. Once they do that mouthing, you go, all done, and you walk away right away. So leave the area. Don't leave for too long because then they can start self-entertaining. But a couple minutes, and then I go back and I do it again. That's a great use of negative punishment, and that works on a lot of puppies. It could work on older dogs too. Like, oh, this is ending the game. This is stopping it, and you're walking away. And walking away from them is better than putting them in a crate. You can put them in a crate. That works as well. But walking away, from my experience, tends to work a little bit better. Or you can redirect, and then once the dog knows the rule, so if I'm redirecting, I use the word wrong. So I'll tell the dog wrong, they go to mouth wrong, I'll make them do a sit, then I'll release them. In this situation, I'm not going to reward them. I do that over and over again until the dog mouths at me, I say wrong, and they stop. Once they show me that, then the next time they mouth at me, I'm not saying wrong, I'm not going to trigger a reinforcement event, again, where we get the dog to perform an action. I'm going to trigger a correction event. So I'm going to say no, I'm going to give the dog a correction, the dog stops, yay, good dog. Now, with the correction event, what what we need to know, and this is also important. So I've seen a couple videos pop up where trainers are saying things like, "Oh, most people don't understand punishment." I disagree with that statement because I think most people understand punishment. I think most people have a good idea. You may not know the specific terminology, but most people can go, yeah, if you take something away from someone, that's a punishment. If you hit someone, that's a punishment. Obviously not recommended, but most people understand punishment. But what these trainers are referring to is really just the lack of follow through. When we have a dog classically conditioned to a marker, and again, a marker is a word or sound that predicts any one of the 4 quadrants of operant conditioning. So if I say yes and I give a treat, positive reinforcement, marker. If I say no and I give the dog a leash pop, that's a marker for positive punishment instead of the positive reinforcement. If I say oops and I don't give the dog a treat, that's a marker for negative reinforcement, or I'm sorry, negative punishment. If I say wrong and I use leash pressure or a tone on a remote training collar, that's negative reinforcement. With each one of these, I hope I said that right. Leash pressure, negative reinforcement, treat, positive reinforcement, leash pop, positive punishment, taking something away, negative punishment. If I get a dog classically conditioned to any of the words that predict these, each one of those are going to have a change of behavior. That's what classical conditioning is. We see a change of behavior. I say yes, the dog salivates. I say no, the dog goes, uh-oh, I'm going to get a correction. On the type of training that I do, the system that I like to follow, and trainers that use similar systems, when we get our dogs classically conditioned to the condition punisher, the word that predicts the correction, there are 4 very common change of behaviors that we see with our dogs. And this happens before they even receive a correction. Just like I say yes and the dog starts to drool, the dog's drooling before I give them the treat. I say no, and the dog instantly complies. So that's number 1. It's the most common with the training system that I use. Number 2 is what I call evasion. We say no, and the dog goes, I'm out of here. You're not correcting me. Number 3, the dog freezes in place. Uh-oh. And number 4, the dog runs to the human. Now, we can see variations of this, but these are the most common that I see. And number 1 most common is instant compliancy. You tell your dog down, your dog chooses not to do it. You go, no, dog lays down. Your dog jumps up on the sofa, you say no, your dog jumps off very quickly. Instant compliancy. If we want reliability, it doesn't matter what our dogs do after we say no, the correction is coming. They cannot stop the correction after they triggered the correction event. So if the dog jumps on the sofa and I go no, we've entered the correction event. And that event is not over until the dog receives the correction. So there's nothing they can do to escape it. If the dog learns, oh, I can do whatever I want as long as I instantly comply, then I'm going to keep doing these behaviors because there's no consequence. It's like driving on the highway. I used the same analogy yesterday. It's like speeding on the highway and a police officer turns on their lights. So you see those red and blue lights flashing behind you and you slow down and the police officer drives by and goes, good job, way to go, and keeps going. That would be the same thing. And that doesn't happen. So once those red and blue lights come on, that is our marker that the police officer is using on us. Like, oh no, oh, I got that feeling. I'm going to get a ticket, a warning. I'm going to be late, whatever. Same thing with the dogs. So then it prevents them from doing the behavior. The dog jumps on the sofa and I say no, and the dog jumps off and they still get the correction. The dog goes, I'm not jumping up on that sofa again because I don't want to receive the correction. So it's about understanding that concept of classical conditioning and following through with the correction. I forgot what the question was. Oh yeah, mouthing. So then we can follow through with the correction. The correction should end the behavior. So again, self-reinforcing behavior. Prevent, redirect, correct. I would also like to know about mouthing. Okay. Yep, so answered that. Looking for a job at a kennel. Okay, go around and send in an application. Thank you so much for your answers. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I try my best. Why is my German Shepherd not good at command names and only treat and hand signals? Usually what causes that is what's known as overshadowing. So this is something I also talk about a lot. Overshadowing is when 2 things are presented to our dog at the exact same time. I recommend setting up a camera and filming yourself. And while you're training, so the sequence is, so think about a command as a question. And the physical cue, so if I take food, if I have my little dog and I take food and I lift that food up and the dog looks up and sits and I give the dog the food, that's the physical cue for the dog to sit, lifting my hands. Same thing, if I bring my hand to the ground and that gets the dog to lay down and I reward the dog, the physical cue is me bringing my hand to the ground. Some people point, they point and the dog's like, oh, and then they lay down. It's the physical cue. So think of the physical cue as the answer to the question. And the question is the command. So when we ask our dogs a command, or when we give our dogs a command, rather, we go, sit. What we're really doing is we're going, hey, Fido, do you know what to do when I say sit? And Fido goes, no, I don't know what to do when you say sit. And I go, here, this is what you do. And then I give him the answer. But we do that with one word, sit. Then we give the answer. What we don't do is we don't do the cue and the command at the same time, and that's the most common mistake across the board. There's a concept known as fading. So fading is where we gradually reduce the physical cue, and I'll give you a human example. The 2 plus 2 is a great one. So if I tell a kid, hey, what's 2 plus 2, right? A young child that's just learning math, and they're thinking about it, I can go, it's 4. Right? I can just give them the answer. Or I say, what's 2 plus 2? And they're thinking about it, and I go, I start to mouth as if I'm going to say 4. And they're like, oh, 4. So I'm fading the help. I'm fading the way in which I'm giving them the answer. And it's the same thing with dogs. I minimize how big the physical cue is. If I'm teaching a dog a spin and I'm using luring and I'm doing this big elaborate lure where I'm getting the dog to spin, it starts that way, but eventually I can do like a little flick of the wrist and the dog will still do the behavior. So that's a concept of fading. I'm fading the help to get the dog to do the behavior. But in all of these, we still need to make sure the command comes first. So what I'm saying is set up a camera, film yourself, and try to separate the command from the physical cue. I usually try to give a half-second pause. So down, then the cue. Sit, then the cue. Heel, then the cue. So I'm giving them the answer, but I'm giving them about a half-second to process the word, the noise, before I present the answer. And then if I see the dog starting to recognize it and they're starting to answer, then I will let them attempt to answer it. And then the moment I notice they need help, then I'll help them. All right, scent work question. What techniques can I use to introduce blank searches as early as possible? So I wouldn't say that I am a scent detection expert, but I have done scent training with a handful of dogs, and I enjoyed it. It's fun. The way that I do it, if you go to my scent detection series, I have a process that I do. I worked with a police department down in far Texas. Not really the police department. I shouldn't say that. I worked with the head canine. I don't know what the title is, but he's the head guy who runs the canine unit. And he's a certified master trainer, great trainer, and he runs the whole scent detection program. And I was down there at his facility, and we were doing a whole detection series. And I pretty much kind of took his system and took the system that I learned at the Tom Rose School and put those together. So I learned from him down in Texas, the teaching of the behavior of the dog. If you've seen my scent detection series, the dog jumps on the climb bed and I reward that behavior. I'm not asking the dog to do it. I'm just rewarding when the dog does it, kind of a version of free shaping. And then once the dog understands that, then I add a container that I'm going to be placing odor in later. And the dog naturally sticks their head in it to investigate it. I mark that behavior. Now I have the dog placing their head into a container, and that container is empty. There's no scent. I'm getting the behavior of the dog placing their head into the odor. Once I do that, I like to do field searches. This is where I scent a toy. I usually do balls. Some people mention like, oh, tennis balls are not good for dogs' teeth, which is true. So I don't let them chew on it. But a lot of times I did use tennis balls. I would buy a box from Costco and I would put the odor on every single ball. And then I would go out and I would just do chuck it. I'd throw the ball. Dog would go get it, bring it back. I discard that one and I throw the next one. And then eventually it gets to the point where, so when we first throw it, we let the dog see where it goes. They go to where they last saw it, and then they instinctively use their nose. And then I let the dog see it, and then I spin the dog, and I send them so they lose visual of where it is. And then eventually we just place it out in the field, and we have the dog go find it. And then they're just using primarily their nose. So this builds a positive association to, so the primary find has the odor, which is, in this case, the ball has the odor on it. Then I start to introduce different containers where we have now multiple containers, but we're adding an odor to it. And when the dog gets to the odor initially, so if I have 3 containers, 2 without the odor, 1 with the odor, I show the dog a presentation, the dog goes to it, then I present the next one, dog goes to it, then I present the third one that has the odor, dog goes to it, free. I use my termination marker, terminal marker, dog, and I say termination and terminal, people call them both. Dog jumps up, grabs a tug, we play a little bit, or I throw a ball, or whatever it is that I'm doing to reward the dog. So in this case, I'm not asking for an indication or something like that. I'm just showing them once you get to this odor, you're going to get a reward, and they already have a positive association to it from doing the field searches. So I hope that answered your question about introducing blank searches. I think that's what you mean. I'm not 100% sure, though. Would you recommend any online resources for beginners? So I was talking about this earlier on the live Q&A. Sit, Stay, Learn has some good courses. Learberg Online University has some good courses. My #1 pick for online stuff for cost and value is Michael Ellis. His online course is great. You got the NePoPo system, which is online training. You have Training Without Conflict. You have Nino, STS Canine. These are all good resources. But just like with anything, it's dependent on how much effort you put into it. You can't just watch it and not train. You have to watch, train, watch, train, watch, train, watch, train and film yourself. Review the footage, make adjustments, train some more to really get good. Okay, your German Shepherd started search and rescue training. Very cool. And is up to 24-hour-old trail. Very nice. And about 1 mile. He's terrified of harnesses, and I've tried everything. I'd love to continue search and rescue, but was looking for different tools for search and rescue. So if you're not able to use a harness, but you still want your dog to be able to pull, another great option is an agitation collar. So an agitation collar is a really thick collar. A lot of protection trainers use this, and it's designed to cover more space. They're very thick, so then the dog can pull, and it's not putting a lot of pressure on one spot. Now, ideally, a harness would be better, and a harness is what I use if I want my dogs to pull. It's my #1 go-to. If I want my dog to pull for any reason, I go to a harness. You can also try to condition your dog to the harness. So do counter conditioning, what we were talking about earlier when a dog is afraid of something. So you can bring the harness out, don't even put it on your dog, bring it out, do something fun, put it away. Bring it out, feed your dog, put it away. Bring it out, do that over and over until it doesn't become something. So it's about the point in which the dog responds in a negative way. This is the whole concept of counter conditioning and desensitization. If I have a dog afraid of a harness, we're using that for this, and if I bring that harness closer than 5 feet to the dog, so if I get 4 feet from the dog with the harness, the dog becomes afraid, then I don't cross 5 feet. I build the dog's confidence, I create that positive association, and then eventually I can get to 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1, and then I can put it on, do something fun, take it off. So I'm counter conditioning the dog to the harness. So that's probably what I would try to do. I think that's going to be a better option than using an agitation collar, but an agitation collar could be a good option if you need your dog to pull and your dog doesn't want to wear a harness. Okay, how do you get your giant schnauzer to play gently? He gives me bruises when we play. I would have to see how you're playing. Is he jumping up on you? Is he grabbing you and wrapping his paws around you? Is he play nipping you? So these are all things that we would have to consider. What I said earlier with the puppy, negative punishment works great. Okay, if you want to play that way, I'm going to end the game and we're not playing. And then you can come back and try again later. But it has to end the moment the dog does it. So the moment the dog does it, remember, the closer the consequence is to the behavior, the stronger the connection. You can have tools to manage the behavior. So if you're playing and your dog is not on any leash or anything like that, you can have your dog on a leash. So now you're playing, and if you need to, you can control your dog. So your dog goes to Let me use an example with my dog. So I'm doing a focused heel right now with Maverick, and I'm using a little cheating technique. It's a technique I haven't used before, so I'm going to see how it works out. But so far, I really like it, and it's been working out really nice. The training vest that I have has a magnet right here, and you can hook. There's toys that come with the magnets in them. A ball and a rope is one that I have, and a tug toy. So I could put that there. I walk with my dog and heel. My dog's looking at the source, the ball, and then after a certain amount of paces, I can use my secondary terminal marker and I throw the ball. And I build up the habit of the dog looking there, and then eventually I can remove it and so on. And there's going to be a process, of course, for that, which is going to be interesting and fun. But while I'm doing that, if he tries to jump up and get the toy, I have him release it, I reset, I do it again. Jumping up and grabbing the toy is not going to progress the game. He has to do it the right way in order to play. And then when I am playing kind of tug sort of deal with him, even though I'm using a ball and rope, which is still technically tug, I let him win. I always let my dogs win. Now, some people will win against the dog, but I always like to have the dogs win. And then when I am taking the tug, I do an out. So I tell the dog to out. And a lot of times as I'm bringing it back, if he jumps up and tries to bite the ball, out, I have him release it. And then again, he doesn't get to re-engage until he does what I want. Now, I know he really wants to get to it. So if I notice the next time, so let's say I have him out and he releases, so this is him, right? This is the ball right here. So he releases the ball and then tries to go at it again, and I have him out and he releases it again. And you can tell this is some impulse control that he's dealing with. And then the next time I have him out, I out it, the ball's here, and he holds back for a moment. I might go free, let him grab it, and now we're going to play. I'm rewarding that impulse control. And then I might ask for a little bit more. So this is where they say we're training the dog in front of us. We're making the adjustments according to the dog to get what we want. So if I'm playing with a dog that's rough and you're getting bruises, again, I don't know why you're getting bruises. Is he biting, mouthing at you? Is he jumping into you and hitting with the paws? I would control. So if I'm playing with my dog jumps up at me and I don't want that, I let my dogs jump up at me. But if I don't want that, then I would say wrong. I would guide the dog off. Good. I would do a little bit more. Dog's doing what I want. Free. Now I'm going to reward again with the toy. All right. Okay. Someone said, yes, they are trainable, but you have to work and learn. I'm assuming you're talking about the Huskies. I'm about to get a Pomsky. I just want to know if it will be like training a Husky or maybe a little bit easier. There's going to be things with breeds that you can assume are going to be a certain way. Like I can assume a lab's going to be a certain way. And this is why it's important to know the lines that the dog comes from. So like when we get a dog from a breeder, what we're doing is we're paying for the odds of getting the dog that we want. Now, my dogs do come from breeders. I know some people are against breeders. Oh, you always have to rescue. Don't buy, rescue, adopt, don't shop. But I'm a true believer that if only good breeders existed, shelters and rescues would not exist. Those are byproducts of bad breeding, backyard breeding, indiscriminated breeding, breeding for money. Oh, John Wick 3 came out and everybody likes Malinois, so now I'm just going to start breeding Malinois without actually knowing anything about the breed. Oh, Rin Tin Tin, German Shepherd. People like, now I'm just going to breed a bunch of German Shepherds. That's the wrong way to do it, and that's when we end up getting a bunch of dogs in shelters. And we're probably going to end up seeing more Frenchies, for example, in shelters because they're starting to become bred quite a bit, and we're really good at ruining breeds here in America. So anyways, point that I'm making, if you're getting it from a breeder, you should have a good idea of where this dog is coming from, what the dog is being bred for, what sort of personality traits. I don't worry too much about characteristics. So I would define characteristics as what the dog looks like. What is the dog's coat? What is like my concern is the dog's traits, their temperament and disposition, like what sort, and temperament is what people often call like the dog's baseline or whatever. Temperament is how my dog's going to act without any sort of external influences. And I'm going to be more focused on the dog's behavior. So is this dog, I'm going to bring up Bethany again from PH Dogs. Again, really great trainer. I was talking to her a few weeks back and she was talking about her Newfoundland. in comparison to her Malinois. She says, I take my Newfoundlands out and people are like, oh my gosh, they are so well trained. And she's nice and polite and says thank you. But in her head, she's like, they're not well trained. They're well behaved. My Malinois, they're well trained, not well behaved. So behavior, now of course you can have a well-behaved dog and a well-trained dog. Of course those two things can go together. But if I'm going to get a Newfoundland, for example, I want that dog to be very friendly, very outgoing, very sociable. If someone comes into the house, I want that dog to go up and be like, oh, hello, a new person. This is great. Whereas certain dogs that are bred for like military, police, protection type work, they're bred to be more cautious when people come in. And so you're going to have a different response. So you should have a good understanding of how your dog's going to be when your dog comes in. And when we are looking at training, don't focus so much on having the best trained dog. Focus on being a better trainer. And you're going to get a better trained dog as a byproduct, and focus on giving your dog the best quality of life possible. So when you're doing things with your dog, think, is this in my dog's best interest? Does my dog enjoy this? Is this valuable? Is this safe? Am I increasing the overall balance of my dog? Meaning, are they getting the right physical and mental stimulation according to who they are? Are they getting enough affection? Do they feel supported? Do they feel like they belong? All these things, do they have a sense of certainty? Are they able to predict and control their environment? These are the things that you want to focus on. And you're going to have the dog for its whole life. At least that's our goal. That's what we should do. And so you have the dog's whole life to train them. So train a little every day, make it fun, and you'll end up getting really nice results. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I do plan on doing another live Q&A tomorrow. Can you believe that Nate is giving this for free? Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. I will be getting a puppy. I will be getting it as a puppy at 2 months. Thank you. I plan to start training ASAP. Yep, we want to start training right away. Nate is one of the best. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I do think Michael Ellis is the best, which I'm going to try to get him on my podcast. In fact, I'd be curious to hear what everyone thinks about this. This is something I'm going to try to do with Michael Ellis. Now, the reason why I'm going to try to do this with Michael Ellis is, again, because I think he's the most articulate, well-spoken, really understands dog training at a level significantly deeper than mostly anyone else. I don't want to say everyone else, because, like Ivan Balabanov, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He's considered one of the best out there. Mia is amazing. Schoemer, something like that. I can't recall how to say it. So there's a lot of phenomenal trainers. But Michael Ellis is very articulate. And so there's this debate that's constantly going on. I don't know if it's virtue signaling or what exactly it is, but there's the debate between pure positive versus balance. Like, balance trainers are cruel and they're harming dogs, and pure positive is the way to go, or pure positive, they don't get results. Their dogs are uncontrolled. You need balance. And there's this constant debate. And a lot of balance trainers have tried debating with pure positive dog trainers. So one of the big names out there is Zach George. I believe Robert Cabral tried doing a debate with him, and he said no. Ivan Balabanov tried doing a debate with him, and the only thing he did was he posted something on his Instagram and said, public letter to Ivan Balabanov, but he won't even do a debate. Like, he won't have an intellectual conversation. So what I'm thinking about doing, and let me know real quick in the comments what you all think about this, I'm going to study all the arguments that pure positive have. And I'm going to do something that attorneys, lawyers do when they're learning. I mean, I didn't go to law school, but I've heard that they do this. I don't remember what it's called. Some of you probably do. But they debate certain cases or whatever. So it's like, you have to debate this, you have to debate that. So I'm going to learn everything I can about the arguments that pure positive makes. I'm going to act as if I'm a pure positive trainer. And I'm going to see if Michael Ellis would like to come on and debate, to where I will debate on behalf of pure positive trainers and he will debate on behalf of balance. Now, again, I'm a balance trainer, but I want to do my best to play the role as pure positive and argue why I think as that particular character for that interview. And again, it's going to be like an intellectual conversation type exercise, and I will debate that. So let me know what you all think about it. If you're on right now, tell me if you think that's a good idea. If you think we should do that, I think I can get Michael Ellis on here to do that. I think it would be a really fun conversation. Of course, Michael Ellis is going to smash me and beat me. I'm pretty confident, but I think it would be a fun conversation. Okay, would love it. Awesome. Do it. You should do it. Thank you. That would be really cool. Awesome. Yeah, I think I'm going to do it. Probably in a month or so. We'll see how it goes. So my plan for pretty unique approach. Good idea. Thank you. Okay, awesome. I appreciate that, everyone. The way that I'm doing my interviews moving forward, so I'm releasing the episode that I did with Larry on Friday. So Larry and I had a great interview. It was interesting because when I did the interview, I was so exhausted because the day before, myself and my friend Austin, who's a trainer in Ohio with Zero to Hero dog training, he drove from Ohio to my place in Indiana, and then we drove the 10 hours to the seminar. We were exhausted. We only had about 4 hours of sleep before the seminar. We were in the seminar all day, and then we went out to eat with Larry and a few other people, Rob, who hosted the event, and a couple other trainers. That was really fun. And then after that, we sat down and we did the interview. So I was kind of delusional during the interview, and I don't know how Larry did it, but man, he was on his A game. We had a really great conversation, and I forgot pretty much everything about the conversation until I started to edit the interview together. And I was thinking to myself as I was going through, like, this is a really great conversation that we had. And Larry was very well spoken, covered a lot of different subjects, and it was a lot of fun. So I think everyone's really going to enjoy it. Again, I'm going to release it Friday, and then the next week, Larry is going to come on my channel as a guest for a live Q&A. So then you guys can jump on and ask Larry and myself questions simultaneously, just like this, but Larry's going to be on as well. And that's going to be my format moving forward. So after that, most likely I'm going to have Bill from Bow Wow Bill. If you look up Bow Wow Bill, he interviews trainers and he has a lot of experience. So I'm probably going to have him on the following week. And that's going to be a pre-filmed episode, just like the one with Larry. And then the week after that, we're going to do a live Q&A. So each month, I'm going to interview 2 people. One is going to be a pre-recorded interview, and then the following week is going to be a live Q&A. So if you watch the pre-recorded one, so let's say I do an interview with Bob Salamini. I mentioned him earlier. Really amazing protection decoy. Phenomenal trainer. So let's say we get on here and we talk about protection. We talk about decoy work, and we talk about French ring. And you watching, you're really interested in French ring. You want to compete. You want to be a decoy. The following week, you join us for the live Q&A, and now you can ask him questions based on the conversation that we had the week prior. So I think it's going to be a really great format, and we're going to have a lot of fun with it. I'm really excited about this year. I'm going to be producing way more content. Last year, I did not produce that much. Again, the excuse was that I was in Oregon and it rains all the time out there. And so I was happy to get out of there, happy to come to Carmel, Indiana. Nothing wrong with Oregon. You like the rain, you like hiking, you like stuff like that. It's great. But for me, the rain was not something I enjoyed. So I'm happy to be in Carmel, Indiana. Happy to be here with you guys talking dog training. So again, I need to come to an end. I can talk all day, but I'll probably see everyone tomorrow. And remember that leadership is not dominance, it's communication. I'll see everyone in the next live Q&A.